What's up, everybody? This is Cam Han, the Fantasy Man, coming at you from Europe. I am on my honeymoon, as most of you know. I am in the south of France. I am going on a Mediterranean cruise tomorrow morning. It is about, what time is it right now? It's about 9:17 p.m. Ignore that Matt text. I think here, where you guys at, it's about 3 p.m. Anyway, great time. Had a great wedding weekend. I did not put as much work or thought into this video as I normally do, so give me a little bit of grace here. I had the wedding, and then, I'm over here in Europe. I just haven't had the time to really, put in that grind that I normally do. But I'm still married to the game. Not just married to Caitlin, married to the game. And so I will put out something for you people. So let's get into it. I'm going to try to go quick. Matt versus Cameron was the best matchup. Very close matchup. I believe it came down to Jaden Daniels, like 30, 40-yard touchdown to McLaurin, which was awesome. I was on the plane when that happened. I had paid $25 on my phone to have good Wi-Fi so I could watch that game. But it was really choppy. Only got to watch like the first quarter. But then I wanted to watch so bad, I paid for it another $25 on Caitlin's phone, and I was able to watch that last drive. Totally worth it. Anyway, first worst. It was an awesome matchup. Awesome, kind of a little rivalry between me and Matt. Doug versus Greg. Worst matchup. A disgrace of a Giles brother matchup. It was one of those low-scoring games that wasn't really close, and yeah, it was a disgrace of a Giles brother matchup. We normally look forward to those, but yeah, not this time. Worst injury luck. We're going with Greg. I don't believe there were any big injuries this week, but I feel like Greg deserves a worse injury luck because he has had a tough time. He did draft a bunch of injury-prone players, but yeah, I just was throwing him a bone here because I don't think anybody off the top of my head really had a real bad week. Most unlucky, I'm going Preston. Actually, a very unlucky week for Preston. Lost with 139. Eckler got injured during the game, and he had a bunch of bench pop-offs. I mean, the bench pop-off thing, was probably, he probably could have played some better guys, probably a little bit on him, but that was still a little unlucky. But mostly the 139 and a must-win, and having Eckler get injured on top of all of his other injuries is pretty brutal. Most lucky, we're going to go with Doug. Classic Doug win. Anybody who's played fantasy football with Doug before knows that he just somehow rattles off these, crap wins. He wins with, I believe, sub 100 points. Just classic lucky Doug winning with sub 100. It would happen to nobody else. I think Preston even said he would be whatever, like 3-1 or whatever, 2-1 if he had Doug's schedule. So probably everybody would be. I mean, Doug always has the easiest schedule. It's crazy. Dumbest move. Nobody really made any obviously dumb moves this week. But I'm going to give it to Preston. I mean, his bench popped off. Like, you got to think there was a bad decision in there somewhere. So I'm just giving it to him because his bench did so good and his starters didn't. I mean, his starters did good too. So I'm not giving it. It's not a big dumb move, but somebody's got to get it. And I think he is probably the closest. Smartest move, I would say, I think he rolled with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has been pretty bad. He could have thrown in some more desperate options. He could have made a crazy trade. He could have thrown in Michael Wilson. He could have thrown in, which Michael Wilson played well, but he could have also thrown in like a more desperate option like Wan'Dale Robinson, who is good as well. But he went with his gut. He stuck with Amari Cooper, and it paid off. So I think that was a pretty smart move. Best free agent move, I think, was Doug. Now, you could say Preston, but Preston didn't even play Jennings. He just picked him up. I don't think Jennings will keep it up. And he definitely won't be that good when Debo comes back. I think Quentin Johnston for Doug is going to be a flex / good bench guy all year long. And I think that's more valuable than Jawan Jennings, in my personal opinion, someone who will be good all year long. Stock rising, Dylan popped off at the wedding, popped off in fantasy, 3-0. Dylan's making trades. I think, I'm not really counting that trade for this week's video, the trade he made with Preston and Greg. But Dylan, I thought he got a good trade there. He's engaged. He's making trades. He's talking to people. He's talking trash. He did a good job at the wedding. Walked down with two gals. Helped out a lot. And he's 3-0 and he popped off. So I'm giving stock rising just in general for Dylan. Stock falling. We're going with Greg. Injuries. Lowest score this week. I think he's lost 2 in a row potentially. Some people are saying he lost that other trade. I don't know. It was a risky trade. But yeah, stock falling right now. Greg's stock is going down in an earlier round. Best player, we're gonna go with Will. 169. I'm pretty sure that was the highest point scored. Amari Cooper play was a good one. Had great play from his defense and kicker. Which generally is lucky, but on top of the other two things, I would say Will was the best player. Did pretty well at the wedding. Came in, danced hard, got down, got low. So I think Will was definitely MVP this week. In fact, best player, I'll say, not MVP. We'll get to MVP later. Worst player is Greg. Lowest score. He threw in some desperation guys. Cam Akers, desperation move. Had the low score again, sub 100. So, I'd say Greg was the worst player. Greg did pretty good at the wedding. He should have came the day before to hang out. But we'll get into that. I think I had that dog. I think it's fair to say that I had that dog. Cameron beat the number one team or whatever. He was at least an undefeated team in Matt. And it was on my wedding weekend. I stepped up to the plate, getting married, still put out that lineup, still put out that roster, put up a decent amount of points, and took down Matt. Dog, I think I did pretty well. All right, including the wedding stuff. So there we go. We got, whatever. I guess Preston's got 2 unluckies so far. And then Doug's got his first lucky of the season, which I'm sure it won't be his last. Season segments, I didn't do the rankings because I don't have time for that. Because the rankings, believe it or not, take kind of a long time because I have to do math. Dabs. I tried to keep it lower on the dabs this week, but for those of you who do not remember, I gave Hunter dabs because he started Evan Ingram last week, who was injured. Instantly, Will comes at me. He comes at me hard about giving Hunter dabs. So Will, for again coming at me about the Hunter dabs, 3 dabs. So again, Hunter starts Evan Ingram. He's injured. Will defends him. Hunter is not even really defending himself. Will's the only guy that's like, he shouldn't get dabs. Will's saying that I'm threatening the integrity of dabs. He's saying you can't give Hunter dabs. You can't do this. You can't do that. That's going to make dabs irrelevant. I can do whatever I want. I can give whatever amount of dabs whenever for whatever I want. This is my video. I'm giving as many dabs as I so well please. So Will, for caring too much about dabs, about the Hunter dabs, 4 dabs. I love that Will cares about dabs. But him fighting for Hunter when Hunter's not even fighting for himself on the dabs, that's 4 dabs. Will for taking dabs a little too seriously, 5 dabs. Will for saying I gave out 50. Okay, so Will was like, dude, you gave out way too many. You gave out 50 dabs, he texted me. You gave out 50 dabs for the, quote, Evan Ingram debacle. I only gave out 11, guys. I gave out 11 Evan Ingram-related dabs. Hunter didn't even get 50 dabs total. So anyway, it's 50 dabs for Will because I can, whatever. I'll give him whatever I want. Will for thinking I care about what he perceives as being too many dabs for something. 1 billion dabs. I'll give him 1 billion dabs for that. I can give whatever dabs I want. Will for punching a wall at the wedding. 5 billion dabs. Did Will punch a wall at the wedding? No, Will did not punch a wall at the wedding. But you know what? It's my segment, and I'm giving him 5 billion dabs for punching a wall at the wedding. So I'm proving a point here. And on a more serious note, Will admitted, I asked him, in this whole thing, he was like, it shouldn't have been dabs for Hunter. That's crazy. You're giving out too many dabs, whatever. I was like, okay, well, would you have played Evan Ingram? Would you have noticed Evan Ingram was injured? And he was like, oh, of course I would have noticed Evan Ingram was injured. I wouldn't have played Evan Ingram. I'm like, what are you talking about? So Will himself admits that he would not have played Evan Ingram last week, but he thinks Hunter shouldn't get dabs. That's dabs. 3 dabs. Will for being literally the only one who thinks Hunter shouldn't get dabs. That's 10 dabs. So I asked almost everybody in the league who I saw this weekend at the wedding. I saw Greg. I saw Doug. I saw a ton of people, especially Doug. Doug was like, oh, dude, I check my phone all the time. I would have 100% not started Evan Ingram. Everybody, I talked to Hunter, or not Hunter, I talked to Logan, Riley. I explained to people who aren't even in the league. They're like, oh, yeah, dude, you got to give him dabs for that. Will is literally the only one who thinks Hunter should not have gotten dabs for that Evan Ingram play. That's 10 dabs. Will for saying I'm threatening the integrity of dabs when it's really him with his questioning of my dabs that is threatening dabs. 8 dabs. Now we get into the Logan Ty debacle. I put this in there. Logan's not in the league anymore, but a lot of you know him. He still watches. We were what we thought was probably about 10 minutes away from taking our, maybe 20, 30 minutes max away from taking our photos as groomsmen. Logan realizes at this point he doesn't have a bow tie. That's a problem because everybody has a bow tie. So he's like, what do? He shoots out to go get a bow tie. He goes to like 4 or 5 different places. None of them have bow ties. Finally, he goes to Walmart. They have a child's bow tie. He wears the child's bow tie. That's 9 dabs. Now, he didn't end up being late, so that's good. But, yeah, crazy. It was wild at the moment. We were panicked. We're like, what's he going to do? Ends up getting the child's bow tie because he forgot to bring his real bow tie. So, dabs. Logan for going to the bathroom and not telling anyone right before we were going to go down the aisle. We were probably going down, or we were going down the aisle at like 5:30. Everybody's walking down the aisle. Logan probably walks out at like 5:22. And I'm like, where are you going? And he's like, I'll be right back. Gone for like 5 minutes. The wedding planner is like, okay, are you guys ready? And Logan doesn't realize this, but the wedding planner wanted to go a little earlier than 5:30. And we were like, hold on, guys, Logan's not here. Everybody, and you can ask Doug, you can ask Hunter, you can ask Preston, anybody. Everybody was freaking out. We're all like, where the heck is Logan? We have to go down the aisle. The wedding planner runs outside of the house to go find Logan, finds him. I guess he was going to the bathroom. Not only did he go to the bathroom at the worst possible time, he also could have just gone upstairs or in the room next door to go to the bathroom. It was crazy. It was like he left the building to go to another building to go to the bathroom right before we were about to walk down the aisle. Everybody's like, where's Logan? Where's Logan? It's a whole thing. Anyway, Dylan. So now Dylan, I guess he's 3-0. He thinks, he's sick of fantasy and he can troll me. Dylan's trolling me. He's sending me 0-2 memes on Instagram. I open up my Instagram to a chat from Dylan making fun of me for being 0-2. It's crazy. Greg for not driving down to hang out on Friday. 4 dabs. Told him to come hang out on Friday. He wouldn't do it. He continuously was saying, well, I just have to drive back and come right back up. We kept telling him he could stay there, and, he just wasn't getting it. 4 dabs. Doug for not being able to handle the wedding weekend and the fantasy weekend. Doug put up a terrible week in redraft. And to be fair, Hunter was the one who really brought this to my attention, but wedding weekend, Doug's in the wedding. He puts up a terrible week in redraft. He puts up, I think, about 60 or something points in Connor's league. That is a super flex league. He puts up sub like 70 in Connor's league. And then he starts an inactive player in Dynasty. He just fell apart. Like he couldn't handle both things at once. Just had a horrible weekend. And he accepted Will's trade, and he didn't even want to. So Anyway, that was just a whole. It should have been more dabs because Doug also accepted or he kept out the Waddle Puka trade. And Will, as we know, got him on that one. And so it was just, I just like to attribute all those failures to him being busy for the wedding. He couldn't handle both. Um, Preston for not using slash not knowing how his IR spot worked. Preston, he didn't have Pacheco on his IR. He didn't know how to put Pacheco on his IR. He texted me about it. He went probably a week or two without using his IR when he needed to. So that's 3 dabs. But after all of that, as you can see, Bobby gets more dabs than Will with 10 billion dabs for walking out of my wedding as we were getting introduced to go to sleep in the groomsmen cottage. This will be good for Matt to know because Matt, lives around Bobby. We're about to get announced as a couple at the reception. Caitlin and Cameron, Brian, woo! We do our first dances. Oh, yeah, sorry. Caitlin and Cameron Hand, woo! We do our first dance, speeches, start dancing, the whole thing. Bobby runs right past me and Caitlin right before we get introduced. I say, Bobby, where are you going? I don't believe he said anything to me. He just ran out, and then me and Caitlin walk in. We get introduced. Come to find out, Bobby was asleep for the whole entire reception. Will goes and wakes him up during the dancing, and I don't know if I ever saw him again. But Will was like, "You want me to go wake him up?" And I was like, "I guess." I mean, I don't know. But yeah, Bobby was for some reason in the groom's cottage sleeping. I don't know what's going on with Bobby. Somebody should check on him. Matt, get on that. But yeah, Bobby wins 10 billion dabs with that. It was pretty absurd for anybody who had been there. Anyone who wasn't there, ask somebody who was. It's quite the story. Most annoying, we're gonna go with Will. Constant arguing with my dabs. And he's wrong about it. He just was roasting me saying Hunter shouldn't have got dabs for that. Everybody agrees Hunter should have gotten dabs for starting Ingram. So yeah, even though Will was great at the wedding, he did not punch the wall, like I said, but yeah, I had to give him something for the dab arguing. Next week's best matchup was Will versus Cameron. As you can see, we got a rivalry. I'm coming off a win. Will's coming off the highest scoring. I do predict that Will smoke me. I mean, Will has been on fire lately, and his team's looking good. He's got all the karma. Lastly, random rankings. We got most valuable people at the wedding. Hunter will be happy to see that he got number 1, and I'll explain it. Hunter was a huge help cleaning up. Hunter, he gave me a card with a bunch of money in it for a gift, which was great. And he was a big help cleaning up primarily. He didn't do anything wrong. He did show up late on Friday for the lunch, so that was kind of an L. But other than that, he slept outside. That was pretty cool. He helped Caitlin's dad unload helped Caitlin's dad load up a bunch of stuff in the truck. He kept his cool. I think Hunter was big time. He gave a good speech at the wedding or at the rehearsal dinner. And all around, I think Hunter was great. Dylan, similar, he helped out a lot. He gave a phenomenal speech. Everybody was talking about his speech at the rehearsal dinner. Lots of high fives from Dylan. I think he showed up. He looked good in the tux. Doug did his thing. Doug was shockingly not toxic. He didn't give a speech, but he was very, very helpful. He didn't dance at all, but he hung out at the reception pretty good. Andrew popped off on the dance floor, helped a lot. Andrew was like my go-to guy if I needed something. I was like, Andrew, can you go get me this? Can you go get me that? Did very good. Didn't do anything crazy. Took one for the team, slept on the couch. So did Doug. Doug slept on the couch too. Logan did pretty good, gave a good speech at the wedding. But he had the tie thing, and he had the bathroom thing. But other than that, he was pretty good. Same with Riley. Riley did well but he he kept throwing up in the sink apparently the night after, which people were telling him to go to the toilet, and he was like, no, I'm standing at the sink, and people had to clean up his throw up in the sink a bunch of times, so that's an L. And then also he couldn't figure out how to pause the music at the reception, which was pretty rough. But he's probably, I don't know, him and Logan were close. What's that?
Pause the music at the rehearsal.
Yeah, what'd I say?
Reception.
Oh, yeah, he needed to pause the music at the rehearsal and he couldn't do it. Will showed up, did his thing. Everybody else just kind of showed up. Preston has to be below Will, though, because he was supposed to come to the rehearsal dinner and he didn't. Then Greg was on the dance floor. Tyler, I'm sure he was. I didn't see Tyler as much. And then Bobby, of course, was in last place because he just slept through the whole wedding. And then lastly, or not lastly, but close, most European, I would say Ashton, which is not a compliment. Sam looks relatively European to me. Will with the mustache, he looks maybe a little German, maybe a little French. Dylan, Scandinavian. Cameron Broker, of course, with the blonde hair and light skin, is clearly, a little Netherlands maybe. Hunter, British maybe. Greg, not very European. Matt, I would say from 7 below are just pure-blooded Americans until you get to me at 12. I'm about the least European in this group. And I make that a category because, again, I'm in France right now, and I've just been seeing a lot of Europeans and just thinking about you guys. Lastly, this is a most likely to not wash their hands, featuring Hunter's coworker. Hunter's coworker looked at a bunch of pictures of us. Apparently, Sam looks like he doesn't wash his hands ever. Then Bobby, apparently I'm number 3. I don't look like I wash my hands. Ashton, Cameron Broker, Matthew, Dylan, Greg, Will, Preston, and Doug. I don't know what kind of picture Hunter showed this woman of Doug, but there's no picture I've ever seen that makes him look like he washes his hands the most. Also, Preston, I could see that. Preston looks like a good hand washer. And lastly, the tier list of dog. You guys can just check it out. We got at the top Blandford. We got Mark from New York. We got Bob Saraday. Josh Allen's got a lot of dog in him. Mr. Davison, he was at the wedding, and then that's a literal dog. But yeah, that is pretty much the video that you can see at the bottom. That's Will's good friends, Randy, and I don't even remember the other guy's name. But yeah, and I will, potentially make another video next week. I'm going to be watching games if I can on the cruise. But yeah, good time, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.